Today I'll be showing you how you can can pickled jalapeños, a very easy cold pack recipe.
Welcome back to your healthy
So the first step is going to be weighing out the jalapeños. So for this recipe, it called for 1.5 jalapeños. But if you have less, you can still use it because you just will have extra brine. I used a little bit less than 1.5 pounds and I actually needed to make more brine. So consider having some extra water and leaving out your vinegar until you're sure that you don't need any more. So I'm going to start off by putting the brine together. So I'm getting the 1 cup of water, the 3 cups of vinegar. Now you could use white vinegar or apple cider vinegar for this recipe, but you want to make sure you don't use your homemade vinegar because you want the 5% acidity. So you're going to add those ingredients. You're going to add in the garlic, which I use some of my own garlic, and you just want to crush it. You can go ahead and dice it if you want it to be a part of the brine, but I'm just going to do it the way that they did in their recipe. So I'm just adding that to it, and then you're just going to put that on the stove and get it to a boil. That's going to be the longest part of the recipe. So I did that first to get it out of the way so that I could cut the jalapeños. So the jalapeños are going to be cut in 1/2 inch rings, and you want to make sure they all are about the same size so that it will have heat distributing evenly throughout the jars. I'm using this collapsible strainer, and I'm going to wash them in batches just so I can make sure all of them are pretty clean. Now, when I grow my own jalapeños, I do check to make sure they're a little bit wrinkled before I take them off, just to make sure that they have developed all of their spice. Now, I suppose if you don't want to use the seeds, you can take them out and it'll be a little less spicy. I'm not going to do that. I tend to just stick with the recipe for the first time doing it. And so that's how I'm going to do it here. So I'm going to use the gloves and pack them into the jars. The recipe called for 1/2 pints, but 1/2 pints and pint jars have the same processing time. You could also use some wide mouth jars for this, but they are easy enough to go ahead and stuff into the jars without using that here. So I'm going to save them for another pickle recipe. So we're just going to bring the brine to a boil. I let it go a little bit further, and then I'm just going to pour them right over the jars. Now you want to keep this space to a 1/4 inch headspace, and so I usually go about 1 inch headspace all around, and then I go and top each off. And in between doing that, I usually do a couple of times of me debubbling the mixture, which is just taking the bubbles out. And you can do that with a kitchen knife if you don't have a debubbler tool. You just want to be careful that you don't actually scratch the jar. And the headspace is going to be important because it may lose some liquid while it processes, and it just helps to make sure that all of the jalapeños are actually under the brine. So make sure you get it to the boil and then you put it over. You don't want to shock from different temperatures. So it is important that you have the hot jars and then the hot liquids into the jars, and then you put it into the canner also. So now it's time to clean off around the rims of the jars and just along the outsides. You want to make sure you get a nice seal after doing all of this hard work. So I usually just use the towel that is on one of the corners, go around and do that to each jar. Then I put the lid and band on, and you just want to do it just to regular wrist tightness. You want to basically turn it on with one hand. You don't want to have to hold the other jar just to get it really tight. You want it just to where it doesn't spin anymore. And so I'm going to do that with each one and then move on to the next step. So for the steam canner, you want to get it just before a boil, and then you're going to add your hard jars to that. And I'm just going to space them out, get them nice and flat. Try not to drop them while you put them in there. And then we're just going to cover them and we're going to process this for 10 minutes. With the steam canner, you're going to actually turn it off and then you're going to let it sit an additional 5 minutes before you take the lid off. Whereas if you water bath can, you're going to turn it off and actually remove the lid, but let it sit for the 5 minutes additional as well. So now we're going to go ahead and take the jars out. A lot of times during this process, you will hear them ping and you'll know that they're finished. And so I went ahead and took them out, and I usually use the same towel that I had them on prior, just fold it up and just get it cleaned on the bottom. And then I take the jars and sit them on there. You don't want to put them onto a counter while they're hot. Just want some kind of barrier between them. And so you let them sit for 12 to 24 hours, or unless you hear the amount of dings that you need and you can actually physically look and see that it's sealed. And that's it. Check out my other diced green chilies using jalapeno recipe, and I'll see you in the next one.